Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for First Person Conversations with Holocaust Survivors. I'm Bill Benson, and I have hosted First Person since 2000. We are in our 25th year. Each month, we share firsthand accounts of survival during the Holocaust. Each of our First Person guests serves as a volunteer at the museum. Please send us your questions and let us know where you are watching from in the live chat. We are honored to have Holocaust survivor Ayana Touval share her firsthand account of survival with us. Ayana, thank you for joining us and for agreeing to be our first person today.
Okay. Yeah, I'm honored. Thank you, Bill.
Ayana, you have so much to share with us in a short time, so we'll get started. You were born March 4th, 1939, less than 6 months before the start of World War II in the city of Zagreb. At the time, it was in a country called Yugoslavia, but today it is in Croatia. Before we turn to your life during the war and the Holocaust, please tell us about your parents' lives prior to the war.
They lived in, as you said, in Zagreb, a city of less than 60,000 people. And they were part of the community. My mom was a music teacher, piano teacher. She knew all the artists of the city. My father was in business. He knew, of course, many people. They have a huge family. So they had many obligations and a very rich social life.
Ayana, as you mentioned, your father was a successful businessman. Tell us a bit more about him and his business, and also, of course, about this terrific photograph.
Yeah, so he was at the head of a company that exported timber and lumber. Now I learned the two words, timber and lumber, exported from Yugoslavia to the other European countries like England, like France. And he could afford a car. So you see, it was an Audi, which sounds amazing, but the amazing part is car, not Audi. And here they are, my parents, and they look very fancy. They're very elegant.
So
To be elegant was important.
Having a car at that time was unusual, right?
Usual. And they were elegant, and that was always important, to be dressed properly.
Yeah. And Ayana, you said that your mother was a music teacher, and that she knew a lot of the artists in the community. But when she was younger, I believe at age 18, she went to live in Paris, and then after she returned, she studied music. Tell us more about your mother and about her parents.
Yeah, so her parents, here they are, grandmother, grandfather. They lived in a town called Osijek, which also was a small town. Maybe, I don't know, 10,000 people, maybe less. My grandfather was a lawyer. My grandmother, led with an iron fist house. And they were also part of the community of Osijek. And my mom, when she was 18, she went to Paris. That was such a big deal. And there she met all the intelligentsia of the left bank. I don't know how it happened to her, but it did. Mm-hmm. And she loved the restaurants and the little pubs with a lot of cigar smoke. More smoke, the better, the more intellectual the conversation was. She missed it all her life.
And one of the things you said to me is that you were born into comfort. I know your father's a successful businessman. Will you say more about what you meant by that?
Yeah, comfort at that time was, for example, that the house has help, a maid or whatever the name. But one has to remember that at that time there were no supermarket, and one had to go to the market every day to buy food. There was no dishwasher, there was no washing machine. Everything was also ironed. Who did that? The women did all that. So my mother didn't have, she did not have to go every day to the market buy a live chicken if they wanted to eat chicken and bring it to the kitchen where it would run around, like they say, chicken without a head. That
Hmm.
happened in the chickens in the 30s in houses. So, yeah, there was somebody who did that, and she could be with me or with her students. She could allow herself somebody else to run after the dead chicken.
Something that many in our audience probably are hearing for the first time, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Ayana, at that time, there was definitely political movements, tension among political movements in Yugoslavia, like many other places at the time. How did those political tensions, how did they play out in your own family?
Unfortunately, the Croatians had a nationalistic movement. They did not want to be part of Yugoslavia. They always had an issue with the Serbs. They saw that they are better, how everybody thinks is better. They still have a different religion, a little bit different accent when they speak. And that nationalistic movement was also strongly anti-Semitic.
Mhm.
That unfortunately happened also in other European countries. They were also anti-Semitic because they want to say who they are. So they are, in that case in Croatia, they are Catholic. They're not something else.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
and one of the things you shared with me is that your mother, and as you mentioned, she was spent time on the left bank with the intelligentsia, and she was marrying, as you said, a capitalist in her father, and he was joining a red family. Will you say just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I can say that her brother was, when he was in high school, started to believe in communism, and that was very unfortunate at that time because the regime in Yugoslavia, there was a king. It was a totalitarian regime, very conservative. He became a communist at the age of 17. He went even to prison for that. So the family was marked, and my father was the head of that big timber company. But I think besides that, he was very nice. She also saw some security to be with him and not with the intellectual who smokes.
Mhm. And your father, because of his business, had the opportunity to travel to other countries. And while he was in Munich, Germany in the early 1930s, your father heard Hitler speak. What impact did that have on him?
He was deeply distraught because it was a rambling speech that went on and on and on and on. You could not really hear what he says, besides maybe the Jews have to be killed. I don't know exactly what was there, but maybe. And when he heard that, he said, oops, a maniac is taking hold of this country. And he left Germany and came to Yugoslavia. He had ties to Yugoslavia from before. And he thought that here he will be safe.
Right.
And then he met my mother.
Mhm. Um, Ayana, before we go on, I'd like to let you know that we have people watching and listening to you today from all over the place. So, from the United States, we have, for example, people watching from Ohio, Michigan, Maryland, and New York. And we also have viewers from elsewhere in the world, including we have people watching from across the pond, as they say, in England. So, thanks to all of our viewers wherever you may be today. Ayana, World War II began September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. Soon after your second birthday, the full impact of the war reached your family in April 1941. Nazi Germany and its Axis partners, including Italy, invaded Yugoslavia and partitioned it. What changed immediately for your family once the invasion took place?
I must say that before it happened, they were already dreading terribly because they heard about Hitler in Paris. Just that, I think, was
Mhm.
horrible to know that he's marching in Paris. But what changed immediately, it's unbelievable, but it was to really kill the Jews. They did not immediately maybe kill them, but to assemble them, to terrorize them. And that was all kinds of horrible laws against Jews started. Like you cannot sit in a park on a bench. You cannot go through the park. You cannot shop, I don't know, after 4 o'clock, whatever. All that started immediately. So that's April. It started, and in July, they forcefully started to assemble the Jews. I'm talking about Zagreb,
Mhm.
to assemble the Jews and send them. And it was obvious that they are not sent for their own good. Yeah, it was, oof, no.
So the impact was almost immediate for the family, the
Uh-huh.
community.
That's what they did. Yeah.
As as part of the division of Yugoslavia, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, the Ustasha had been a virulently anti-Semitic party in Yugoslavia. And when the Germans created the independent state of Croatia, which included Zagreb, where your family lived, it was then under the control of the Ustasha. Can you say a little bit more about the Ustasha and their role in all of this?
Yeah, I think it's, let's say, interesting, tragically interesting. I said that before, that when people become nationalistic or a party become nationalistic, they want to say they build their identity on difference from others.
Mhm.
And building identity on difference can lead to horror. And that's what happened in Croatia. It led to horror. So who
And
are the different people? The Serbs, and they massacred 1 million Serbs. And of course, the Jews, because out of the 70,000, only 70,000 in Yugoslavia, we only 7,000 survived. We were not all in Croatia, of course. Yeah,
and just to repeat that, so in all of Yugoslavia, 70,000 Jews and about 7,000 survived at the end.
right.
Yeah.
10%, 10%.
As you were describing some of those conditions, those very harsh conditions that were imposed by the Ustasha and the Nazis, including you couldn't go into parks and all kinds of terrible things. Among them was the requirement that Jews had to wear a yellow badge. You were just 2 years old. Were you required to wear this yellow badge?
Yes. And can you imagine what my mother thought about that? She also
Um,
had a yellow badge. Yeah.
and tell us, this is the actual badge that you were forced to wear. What's on that?
Uh, the Z with a little thing on top, Ż, it's pronounced Ż, for Żydów, or Żyd in Polish,
Mhm.
which means Jew. And of course, it's the Star of David. That's
Right.
a Jewish symbol.
And just very prominent and visible. So everybody stood out that was wearing that badge in a very big way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was yellow, a
Yeah,
yellow badge.
bright yellow. Just
Mhm.
just 3 months after the invasion in July 1941, your parents, your maternal grandmother Irina, and you fled Zagreb to an island in the Adriatic Sea. What compelled your parents to actually pick up stakes and move with your grandmother and you uh, elsewhere?
Oh, as I said, April, Belgrade was bombed. April. And all the horrible laws against Jews started also in Zagreb. It was Yugoslavia, right? It was, the whole thing was one state. And then in June, Jews started to be forcefully assembled and sent to who knows where, according to big lists, or all on the list of the synagogue, all, I don't know. There were also Jewish organizations. If you were part of the organization, and the Ustasha had a list according to that list. So my parents did not wait. So in July, they decided to go. I assume that from April, started packing. I
Started
cannot say
packing.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You left, of course, with your parents and Irina, your maternal grandmother, but your grandmother's husband, your grandfather, did not go with you. Why did he stay behind?
So that's really a poignant story because he was always described to me as a very soft man. Soft, quiet, shy. That's how he was portrayed. So this quiet, shy, studious man did not run away with us because he said, I'm a prominent member of the Jewish community, which was maybe 1,000 people, not more, in the little town of Osijek. I cannot run away. I shall remain here and maybe have some connections in town because he lived there all his life. Maybe I can help them. So he remained. He was really a hero, my grandfather. So he remained, and unfortunately, he and the 1,000 people of the community perished.
In light of what you described about the rounding up of Jews and using the lists of prominent people, he clearly knew that he was taking a great risk. So yes, a very, very brave man.
Mhm.
Were there, Ayana, were there any other family members who stayed behind as well?
Yeah, so he stayed behind in the house where they lived with my great grandmother, who was here she is, the cute lady who's so delighted to see me on the right? That's my great grandmother, Regina. And she said I'm 76 years old, which was ancient in 1941. And she said, who will bother an old lady? And unfortunately, she was very wrong, because, yeah, she also perished. One rumor is that she was just killed. Somebody shot her on the street, but I don't know that.
That's unknown to you. Yeah.
That's unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once you left Zagreb, where did the family go and how did you get there?
So we took the train. There were still trains running in July 41. And we took the train to a town called Split, which I assume was under the Italian whatever. It was a Yugoslav city, but now the Italian were there. But I think at 41, everything was slightly fluid. So we could get there, and also about 2,000 of other Yugoslav Jews got, mainly via Split. So the Italians put us on some boats and shipped us to an island called Korcula in the Adriatic Sea. And they said, here you are.
This is your new home.
And here is your new home.
Mm.
Don't remain in Split. Yeah.
And you would spend 18 months living on the island of Korčula, and it was, of course, occupied by Italy. Unlike the German and Croatian authorities, the Italians did not target Jews, and the island was considered somewhat safer. What can you tell us about that time? What were conditions like for your parents, your grandmother, and for you?
I, I think, first of all, my poor parents listened to the radio daily, and the news were horrible that the Germans are winning. So I don't know that I cannot imagine how it felt. So that's what's happening in the world. No telegrams, no, absolutely no post. They did not know what happens to the family. Then they don't know how long they were there. Then there was no food really. Occasionally, a boat came from Italy and brought something, and then there were very long lines to get some food there. There were fish, and yeah, there was water, but the water was rainwater that was collected in every kitchen, had something called a cistern, and we collected the water. And then there was not much to do. What could the people do? You are there, you are stuck there on a little island. It's lovely for a vacation of 1 or 2 weeks, but it's not lovely 18 months.
The Italians referred to that time on the island of Korčula as free confinement.
Yeah.
pre-confinement. What did that mean?
It's really weird, huh? It it's called libero confino, and is it an oxymoron? You're free, but you are confined.
So you're really not free at all. Yeah.
You're not free. On the other hand, look, it was a little town. You could walk around. You can go to the beach or the port, and here we are. We look. Here it's me, right?
Mhm.
And we are look as if we are on vacation. Yeah, 18 months of vacation. It includes winters, of course, without heating, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tell us about your grandmother. With your grandfather who stayed behind, as you described, your grandmother was waiting, hoping, expecting that your grandfather would come. Tell us about what that was like, because you spent that time with her. And also, did she hear anything at all from your grandfather?
Nothing. There was absolutely nothing. And I did not mention that her son also perished. But we knew that already, that he disappeared.
Mhm.
So it was a horrible pain for her. And she kept her hope alive somehow that my grandfather will show up. So she would every day wash her hands with lemon so not to smell from fish, put a hat on top so to look decent, and we would go to the port, sit there and wait for a ship that maybe will bring grandfather. Only it did not.
Mhm. And you would actually, as you said, you would go with her and sit there
Mhm.
while she just waited in the hope that a ship would arrive with him.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Ayana, Ayana, even though you were very young at that time, you do have some memories of that time, including about the cistern that you mentioned, which was used to collect water, and the smell of fish. Can you say anything more about those early memories? And one of them I'd like you to share is how you learned to swim.
So I must say that I love to swim until now. You see, so please. My father, like my parents did not have much to do, right? Besides standing in long lines occasionally for water or bread or whatever. But here I am, 3 years old, and my father read some books about American Indians. He was very impressed. So
Mhm.
he thought he's the Indian chief. So he takes his little girl and he drops her into deep water, let her swim. My mother shrieks, but I swim out. Aha. And I'm not, no, that did not make me a hater of water. No, I love to swim until now. The method worked. Yeah.
Well, we are
It
grateful
worked
that
for me. It
yeah,
worked for me.
for you,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
this picture of you comes from your time at Korcula, and you shared with me a comment that I thought was really important. That you commented on how short your coat was, and because you had so few clothes, that you were growing, and so that's what that was about.
I know. So the coat was until my knees, maybe, and then it became a jacket in a year.
Mhm. I'd,
Yeah.
Ayana, before we go on, I'd like to remind our audience to please submit any questions. Share your questions that you have with Ayana in the chat feature. And we have a comment that has come in from one of your fellow survivors, and that is Susan Warsinger, who volunteers at the museum. She's watching today, and she writes, "Dear Ayana, have great success with your very first person program."
Does she think I'll have many more?
Yeah,
Like,
many more. Yeah, absolutely.
many more. Okay.
Ayana, in early 1943, you moved again, this time off the island to the mainland of Italy. Why did you leave Korčula?
Incredible. Everything is incredible. So in 1943, the resistance in Yugoslavia was called partisans. The leader was Tito, and they were making inroad in their fight against the Nazis. So they were coming south. South is the Adriatic Sea, and they were approaching Korčula. They could have come. They were already on the coast. The Italians, I think they wanted, I don't know what they thought, But anyway, they decided to send us to mainland Italy. I don't, maybe to save us, maybe not to worry about us. I don't know what they thought. So here we are. Most of the people who arrived with us on the coast of Italy went to something called Ferramonti, another libero confino. And I think my father looked at the confino part of the libero confino seriously, and he decided that we'll be on our own in Italy, and let's see what that brings.
And you literally were alone, as you said. The Italians left you to fend for yourself.
Yeah.
When they did that, what did your parents tell you?
So we are landing in Italy, and one of my parents says to me, from tomorrow, you see, they gave me several hours today. From tomorrow, you speak only Italian.
And in fact, you did that, didn't you?
And I did. How? I don't know. It's a fact.
Will you share with us the incident where you were stopped on a train by Italian police?
Yeah. So how did we travel in Italy? We were also on a public train.
Mm-hmm.
We were. And the trains were super crowded. And there were compartments in the trains. People maybe know that from movies. So here we are in a compartment with our suitcases, I assume 3 suitcases. And my parents, my grandmother and I, and about 4 policemen called carabinieri in Italy, carabinieri. They come into the train and they want our documents. And my parents and grandmother are in deep consternation. Of course, there are no good documents to show them. And they start to look for documents. Where are they? In this person, that person, maybe we have to open a suitcase file. Where are the documents? And the policemen are not very patient. And then they say, until suddenly one of them looks at me and says in Italian, "What a cute girl." And they all leave the compartment. That's it. And wow, and the family breathes.
So he happened to just take notice of you as a cute little girl, and they moved on.
Che bella bambina. I remember the words.
After that, you ended up in Cutiano, which was a mountain town that was north of Florence. Tell us what you can about going to Cutiano, about your journey there.
Yeah. So first of all, by then we already had our fake, and we had documents.
So after that incident on the train, you were able to get false documents? Okay.
Right. So yeah, my nice Catholic names, and also that we are from Trieste, which is a town on the Adriatic Sea that occasionally Yugoslavs had it, occasionally Italy had it, which means that people spoke the 2 languages and also had an accent. So that was kind of a good cover. So we had these papers. We come to Cutigliano, a little town north of Florence, in a hotel with other people who escaped there.
Do you know how your parents were able to get those false identification papers?
Yeah, that was kind of beautiful. They went to a convent. I think they heard from other people. They went to a convent, and there was a monk who produced them. And I think he was also a war hero, because the church did not exactly tell all the monks and priests to help the Jews. No, that was not the case.
Right.
With the church in Italy.
And these are the actual identification papers for your parents, aren't they?
Yeah.
What was your false name?
Anna Corvini. I still have an affinity with the name.
So here you are under false identities, and you end up in Cutiano, And Cutiano is where many of your memories begin.
Right.
Please share with us what you remember and know about your time in this little Italian mountain town.
So again, here we are, about 18 months or how long, the little place that there is not much to do for my parents, for my parents. So I am, they can do something about me. So my father tries to teach me German, no success, but they do teach me to read. Read Italian is not very difficult. So here I am, 4 or 5 years old, and I read better than the older sons of the proprietor of the place, of the lady who owned the hotel. So every evening, I still remember that, I read the news in the paper, in the Italian paper. Everybody admires. I don't understand one word, but enjoy the attention. Yeah,
And there you are, but you're reading the newspaper to all these adults who are gathered around in the small inn that you're living in.
right.
This was a small inn, but there, as you said, there were other people living there, and I think you shared with me even possibly Italian soldiers who had deserted in this little town. Did anybody know that you and your family were Jewish?
Maybe they did. We don't know that, right? My
Hmm.
parents did not go to the church. The whole town, little town, went to church on Sunday. They never joined. My grandmother never went to the church. Uh, was they suspicious? I don't know. I went with the lady of the place. Did they know? Maybe they knew, maybe they did not. But that's a decency of the town. There were also policemen in town that my parents had to go, I think, to the police once per month to say hello.
Hmm.
And they also did not try to pry and to understand better who we are. So
So
that,
it's possible people turned a blind eye in that little town. Who knows, right?
no, they did not care. They did not know. I don't know. Yeah.
Do you know how your parents and your grandmother, how they were feeling at that time about their safety, uh, their futures? Any sense of that on your part?
It must have been hell. Hell. Because again, they did hear the news, what's happening in the world. I mean, they heard BBC. It was always BBC. They listened to that, and they did not know how long we can be there, how long the little bit of money that we still have will last. They did not have much to do.
Hmm.
How do you survive like that? I don't know. It's extremely difficult. And no news from family. No
No,
news.
yeah. Mhm.
Mhm.
You have a story to share, Ayana, about an incident in that inn um, involving, I think, maybe the only bathroom in the entire inn. Will you share that with us?
With the world,
Yes.
my big sin. So, as I told you, I was a little girl who liked attention. And of course, I liked attention from my grandmother, who for some reason didn't only knit and reknit, knit and reknit. She also learned the Italian dictionary. It was a big book. So I saw that book as an enemy. Like, why does she look at the book if I'm around? So I took the book. It's really amazing what I did. I tore out all the pages and put them not where did I put them? In the toilet, in the only one of the building. And then it blocked the toilet. And then there was some kind of a deluge, in flood in the building, and of course no toilet. My father understood who is the culprit, and I shall not tell you all what happened then. But when I went to sleep, my mom came and gave me a kiss and said, everything will be okay. I
Mhm.
never tore a page from a book ever after that.
Much less put it down the toilet, right? Yeah,
Never,
never.
never.
As you said, money was obviously in short supply, but somehow you must have managed, your parents must have been able to at least pay for rent or purchase other absolute essentials. Do you know how they were able to do that?
And that mystery, once I asked my dad, and he said that they had 12 gold coins, and the 12 gold coins lasted the whole war. That's another mystery. I think other Holocaust survivors can talk about that. There was not much to buy. There was not much to eat. And I guess the gold coin lasted a long time. It's a mystery. Yeah.
And Ayana, one of the memories that you do have is of your fifth birthday. Will
Yeah.
you share that with us?
It was lovely because somehow by miracle, a package arrived from Denmark from some relative, and what was in the package? So when I was 5 years old, I go down to the common room or whatever it was, and I was at the height of a table, right? My height. And what was on the table? A little theater with puppets. Ah, with scenery. Now it's a world without TV, world without movie. It's a world where there is one Italian paper that comes every day. And then suddenly there is this little puppet theater. I was besides myself, and until now I have real affinity to dolls, to puppet theater. I really like that.
That's really remarkable, though. It showed up in the mail from someone in Denmark, and in the middle of all that shortages and little, here you have this puppets to play with. That's just
But
fabulous.
then the puppets had to travel to Ason, right? They
Yeah.
could not remain in Cutigliano.
We, Ayana, our viewer who's watching today named Bry asks, how were you treated by the local average Italian citizen?
I think that we were treated. All the stories of my parents are how nice the people were. There is a story I never told you, but for example, once we stopped in Modena and watched, there was a store, and in the window there was only one doll. There was nothing. And I wanted the doll. Yeah, sure, I wanted. So my parents come in, and the guy gives us the doll. That was the
Gives you,
last thing. Guy gives me the doll. I still have it. So how the average Italians were amazing. I mean, our experience was amazing.
wow. And you still have the doll to this day?
Yeah, it's really in Israel, but yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Ayana, after the Allied forces invaded southern Italy, the fascist Italian government surrendered in September 1943, and that prompted Germany to occupy the northern half of the country, which made life in Italy far more dangerous for Jews. What did your parents decide to do?
They decided, they thought that we have no chance to remain if we cannot sit here like sitting ducks in Cutigliano. And then we got somehow to Milan, and the idea was to get to Switzerland. But by then, my parents understood that Switzerland will not throw us out like they did before, because the Americans were already in Italy. And the Swiss saw who is the winner in this war. So they understood if we succeed to get to Switzerland, we shall get in. So we were 2 weeks in Milan when the Allies, our friends, right, were bombing Milan. Pretty, pretty unpleasant. Yeah,
Tell us more about the bombing of Milan, because that's something that you remember.
I do. We were in some kind of a hotel, and whenever there was a siren, we will get out on the street with the suitcases and go down to the train station. There were tunnels under the train station, leave the suitcases at the entrance, and then run into, underground with all the other people. And again, to say to Bry how we were treated by local Italian citizens, when we got out of the train station, when there was the all clear, the suitcases waited for us. Yeah. Nobody took the suitcases.
And that happened more than one time. That happened a lot of times, right?
14 days. 14 days, and many times per
14
day.
days. Yeah, that's incredible. But the suitcases were always there, just where you had left them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
We have a question from a viewer named Lila, and Lila asks, "How did you and your family get to Switzerland?"
So walking, Lila walking. So it was like that. We somehow got to Como, to Lake Como from Milan, I assume, in another kind of taxi. Those taxis were something amazing, right? Smelly, half broken, but yeah, we got. And then we were in some kind of a shed. I remember that. And there were other people. These other people maybe were deserters from the Italian army. They were men. And then there was the guy who will take us over the take us over the what? Over the border. The one whom I assume we had to pay. And we
So
started
almost like a smuggler.
smuggler,
Yeah.
smuggler. But he did a good deed, right? So he took us and we walked. I remember the beginning of that walk because I also walked. And then it came somehow to the top of a hill or a mountain. And then we had to get down a ravine, a huge ravine. I mean, I was a small child, so for me it was an endless ravine. So what did they decide to do? They tied me, the child, on a suitcase. And because my grandmother was nearly 60 and a very old lady, they tied her also on the suitcase and they sent the two suitcases down in the ravine. And we landed kind of near the Swiss border office, whatever it was. And my parents walked, of course. All the other people.
Before you go on, I want you
Mhm.
to elaborate a little bit on that. This is remarkable. You and your grandmother were literally tied to your suitcases
Mhm.
and then sent down this ravine, bouncing like almost like a toboggan, but no snow, into
Yes.
Switzerland.
Now the suitcases, that was, you have to think what the suitcases were in the 40s. They were leather suitcases, and they were so stuffed, I assume. Yeah, they were not
That's
carry-ons.
right. That's pretty amazing. So
Not carry-ons. No, no.
you get down to the bottom of the ravine and then you make your way to the border. What happened next?
And there was a clerk or a official or whatever, maybe some policeman. I don't really remember that. And that person had to tell us where to go. So maybe we were all sent to some kind of a camp to begin with. All I remember from that first camp, me sitting on a mountain of buttons. That was kind of fun to sit on a mountain of buttons. Maybe there was a factory of buttons next door.
Mhm.
But then they divided us. They had their plans, the Swiss. Shall I tell you about that?
Yes, please, very much.
Okay, so my grandmother, because she's ancient, she's nearly 60, was sent to an old age home for other refugees who are so ancient as her. And she spent several months doing little crafts out of paper. It was ridiculous. But don't complain, you're alive. And my parents were supposed to go to some kind of a labor camp, but it sounds bad, but I don't think it was really so bad in Switzerland, the labor camp. And me to some kind of a children's home, because they definitely thought that separate parents from children is okay at that time. My parents were, of course, shocked to separate themselves from me. And that's the building where we were. So my father said that he's such a good wood chopper. I mean, chopped a lot of wood in Cutigliano. He's really he's a professional. He will save the building in the winter. And my mom said that she's a perfect nanny. And she was. She was very good with children. And somehow it worked. So on the condition that they never see me. So don't to make other kids jealous. So that's how the three of us, landed in the big building in Tesh. Tesh is a little place before Zermatt in Switzerland. Mhm.
So this building is the building that you were in, and as you said, you were not supposed to be together with your parents, but your
Mhm.
parents ended up managing to get jobs there,
Right.
and and then still you were supposed to be separated, but your mother would find a way to see you anyways.
Yes, she did, because unfortunately, so think about me who speaks only only Italian. I assume also Serbo-Croatian, but now I have to speak French with kids I don't know, and they're all desperate. I mean, all the kids around me are desperate, and they
Mhm.
also catch all the illnesses possible, like the whooping cough and the measles. Oof, I was very sick. So my mom would dip still in when I was sleeping and give me a kiss on my cheek. Never to forget, never to forget. Yeah.
Mhm. And we have a picture of you from that time as well. Why don't we?
Yeah.
That's a great photograph, Ayana.
Yeah.
You would end up spending about a year in Switzerland until the war's end. What else can you tell us about your time in Switzerland during that year? Your parents were able to, as you said, they found work in the place where you're living. Do you know? Do you recall what you were feeling as a little child still? Did you feel safe in Switzerland to your knowledge?
I don't know. I mean, my parents knew it's temporary. They
Hmm.
knew that they did not come to Switzerland to live in Switzerland. So they waited for the end of the war, and they did not know where will they go after a war. What kind of world is there for them? So they were not settled. My grandmother was always very unhappy. I mean, they were all unhappy because where is the family? What happened? And what is their future?
Right.
Oh, yeah. So how did I feel? I played. I learned French. I went to kindergarten. The teacher was lovely. And the kids around me were naughty kids, I must say. Like in movies, when you see naughty kids, I saw that.
Ah.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
So generally, your life you might have felt safe, but it was a very different. Even though they were in Switzerland, it was a very different experience for your parents because the future was so unknown at that point. And of course, while you were in Switzerland in early 1945, your family did learn the terrible news about your maternal grandfather. Tell us what they learned and about what happened to him, your grandfather Bela, and as well as to other family members in Croatia.
Yeah. I mean, telegrams from the Red Cross started coming, and I remember the shrieks of my grandmother and mother when they opened the telegram, because it was obvious that my grandfather was killed, my great grandmother was killed, my uncle was killed, that as my grandmother told me, 70 members of the family perished. So there was no.
17 members.
Mhm. So she told me.
Mhm.
So, yeah, yeah. And then where do we go now? What do we do now? So for them, it was very hard. And I tried to tell them that don't be so sad, I am here. Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I'm sure
yeah.
that was a powerful motivation for them to
Yes.
continue on, but the losses were just unmentionable and unimaginable. What what do you remember about the end of the war itself and celebrating it while you were in Geneva in May 1945?
And so that was a very beautiful day because there were fireworks over the lake in Geneva. And I always liked fire. I mean, now I like fireworks. Then it was the first time I saw them. Ah, can you imagine that? First fireworks of your life?
Hmm.
It was amazing. And then we paraded. We were supposed to put on some kind of a white clothes, whatever, the whitest we have, and we paraded, and everybody was happy and shouted and sang. So it was a very good day. But it's the fireworks. Yeah.
And of course, we see you in this photograph.
Right? Here I am, but I'm at the end of the group. That's a little bit suspicious to me. Like, maybe I'm not in the inner crowd of that group, possibly.
But you are there in the photograph.
But I'm in the photograph, yeah.
Ayana, we have a video question from a student, Lucas, from Alexandria, Virginia. Let's go ahead and hear from Lucas, and then I'll repeat his question for you to answer as soon as he's done.
Hello, my name is Lucas Everett, and I'm from Alexandria, Virginia. My question is, what was it like having to adapt to so many different cultures whilst fleeing persecution?
Lucas's question is, what was it like having to adapt to so many different cultures whilst fleeing persecution?
For a child is kind of self-involved. Child is a separate kind of being. Mm-hmm. Child is a child. That's what the child wants before getting totally socialized. For my parents, must have been horror. They cannot blend in, and they have to hide, and they have a secret, and they're in mortal danger. I thought about it. Some people become spies, right? And they pretend to be somebody else. They did not want to pretend to be somebody else. They were regular people, and mortal danger all the time. And all the time to pay attention what they say. And I mean, even you cannot, I don't know, you cannot maybe even yawn. I don't know. You cannot. And how do you dress? But of course, they didn't have much choice in that.
Right.
The horror. 4 years of horror from for parents, right?
And I have a follow-up question from a viewer who's named Petra. And Petra asks, Did you ever go back to Yugoslavia?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, first of all, we went back from Switzerland to Yugoslavia. And then in the 2000, I went to the Adriatic Sea, to the island of Hvar. Guys, I recommend Hvar. And they could swim, in the Adriatic Sea. Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, tell us more about your return to Yugoslavia. With the end of the war on May 8th, 1945, your family did go back to Yugoslavia, which was at that time now very quickly under communist rule. What was that like for you?
For me personally or for parents?
For your parents and for you. So
for parents, again, difficult. They have to find jobs, right? They have to find where to live. There were very few apartments. The country suffered during the war. So, my parents. Now, for myself, they put me in first grade in Zagreb when we came. We were only 1 week or so in Zagreb. And it was very weird. My first day in first grade, there is a priest in class. And the priest says that all the Catholics or the Christians have to stand up and pray or something. And I say, I'm not. So he says, okay, so leave the class. So I leave the class. I tell that my parents, they are distraught that happened. But no worry, because after 2 days, there is no priest. We, the kids, have to stand up and say the communist thing, which was the death to fascism, a life to communism or to nationalism or to the people, life to the people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Death to fascism, life to the people. And I could do it with everybody else. That was a good moment. That was a good moment.
I was really taken by that when you shared that with me. One day you are discriminated against, separated, and 2 days later, under the communists, they're now saying there's no religion, and you are all communists now.
Yeah, they decided for all of us. Yeah. Yeah.
When were your parents able to somewhat resume their lives?
So my parents went to Belgrade. My mother got a very nice job in the Academy of Music. She could teach piano, and she even got on the Radio Belgrade and organized the musical hour or whatever. And she also, if somebody was singing, she could accompany. She could accompany singers. So she was successful. Unfortunately, my father, they put him in prison because they found out that before the war, he was a director of a big timber company that exported timber to imperialistic countries, like France and England. He he made the country poor of its national treasures. So he was in a prison for about 9 months. And then one day, without saying anything, a limo, there was a limo in Belgrade at 48, comes to the prison, takes my father out, brings him to a nice building, seats him on a leather chair with a view of the Danube, with a window to the Danube, and makes him into a director of the biggest timber company in Yugoslavia called Yugodrvo. That what do they do? They export timber to the imperialist.
I just want to make sure our audience understands that. So he goes to prison because he was the head of a timber company that exported timber to other countries. He gets out of, they take him out of prison and they make him the director of a timber company to export timber
Because
outside.
he knew the job.
Because he
He
knew
was
he knew the
there
work. Yep. And that, as you said earlier, he knew he was an experienced woodsman and timber man.
Yeah.
When
It was not funny. I must say, I smiled. It was not funny when he
No.
was in prison. No.
Oh, it must have been terrifying for everybody.
Terrifying. Yeah.
When did you end up leaving Yugoslavia?
In 8th or something July, we went to Israel. On the 12th of July, we arrived to Israel on a ship called Radnik, which means worker. Very appropriate name. Yeah, that's when we left.
And you got to Israel, which about a year, I think, after Israel won its independence and became its own state, right?
Right.
Yeah. You, Ayana, you experienced so much as a young child. And I know you've only touched on some of it for us. And it's obvious to anybody watching you that you are a resilient and upbeat and positive person. In light of all that you experience and your family experience, how do you think you remain so positive and spirited?
I think that my parents hid from me the horror. They succeeded to hide the horror.
Mm-hmm.
That was the secret.
Yeah. I want to also share one more comment from an audience member with you, if you don't mind. And this is Michelle. Michelle says, "Thank you for your willingness to share your experience, to teach others, and keep the truth at the forefront. God bless you."
Yeah.
That's from Michelle.
Yeah.
Ayana, I just have one more question for you today. As we face a dangerous surge in anti-Semitism, please tell us why you feel it is important to share your firsthand account of the Holocaust and what all of us, all of us can learn from it.
I think the Holocaust, this museum, this shows us the extent that people can be evil. On the other hand, my little story, what happened to me in the train with the policeman, when they looked at the family, they saw it, a distraught family without documents, and they let us go. That's the lesson we have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big lesson. Like to live and let live. Live and let live. If you have an opportunity to be kind, be kind. You don't have to be always a hero, but you can be kind. Be kind. Never be evil. Never be evil. That's the lesson.
That's distills it down to its most basic level. Never be evil and be kind. Thank you so much for what you've just said. Thank you for everything you've done in this program. You've shared as much as you can in a short hour. I know that most of our audience, I'm sure, feels like I do. I wish we had a lot more time with you. Before we close, though, I do want to mention that we don't have time to go into the rest of your life, which is remarkable. But I will say that you served in the Israeli military, and then you became a teacher, and you have taught mathematics for 60 years now. And even today, you are teaching math at a community college. I want people to know that.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ayana. I'd like to take a moment to thank our donor. First Person is made possible through the generous support from the Lewis Franklin Smith Foundation. And I'd also like to invite you to join us again in February for another First Person program. Thank you all for being with us and being with Ayana today.